Hi readers, it's Lori. Welcome back to my channel, Books, Ink, and Paper. This video is one that I had thought about doing this month, and then I thought, well, maybe I should do it next month because it's the anniversary of this event that will come up today. And then I decided, no, it's fine. This is the time. And I have a bit of a love-hate relationship with this particular topic. So I'm going to share with you today some books that are about hurricanes because it is hurricane season where we live. I've mentioned this before, and it's not an easy time for people who live on the Gulf Coast. My thoughts and prayers are with all of the people in the Houston area, South Texas, and in Mexico, where Hurricane Beryl just came ashore not long ago. We've had some remnant rain from that as well. But because I live where I live, and because before this, at some points, I lived in Florida and in Puerto Rico and in other places where hurricanes are very prevalent, this is a topic that is both, again, kind of fascinating to me, and also sometimes it's too sensitive. So I'm going to share some books with you today, if you're interested, fiction and nonfiction about hurricanes. And some of the ones I've read, some of them I haven't, but I am considering reading, and some of them I read slowly, little bit by bit, because it's a lot. The more time passes, the easier it gets for me to just accept what is and what can be. And I think once you've been wiped out by a hurricane, literally, like all your stuff is flooded and your house has no walls, and well, at least no good walls. And yeah, you've lost a car or two, you just kind of realize that you'll recover, you'll get better. So that's the message that I carry with me now. And some of these have been fascinating to me. So let's get started. Their Eyes Were Watching God by Zora Neale Hurston. I read several years ago now, and it has remained in my mind and in my heart ever since. This is a classic. It was written in 1937, so there's no question that this has been around a long time and is still very, very well read. This is about a woman named Janie who returns to a place where she had lived as a young person, and people are sort of surprised to see her. She's been married, I think, 3 times, and she's just kind of trying to reinvent herself yet again by returning home. She meets people again that she knew before, and she connects with people that she maybe had not connected with before, and they also go through a hurricane. And it is pretty intense to read it, but it was just so well done, and I just remember it as being one of my favorites, and it still remains that now. So she was a novelist, folklorist, and anthropologist whose fictional and factual accounts of Black heritage remain unparalleled. I would like to read another book by her, but I'd also consider rereading this one because it was so wonderful. And then for the next fiction book that I have read, that is The Light Pirate by Lily Brooks Dalton. I don't think this book gets enough buzz. Maybe it does, and I'm just not seeing it. But this was a book of the month selection for me back in December of 2022. It was a new release, and it just sounded good to me. It starts off with a hurricane, an incredible hurricane, and a pregnant woman who is newly married. Her husband has 2 boys from a previous marriage, and her husband works as an electrician. And so, as you know, probably when these things happen, a lot of those responders are not able to be at home. So she's at home, pregnant, with a hurricane coming. I'm not going to tell you what happens, but what happens impacts the rest of this book significantly. But she gives birth to a little girl named Wanda. And Wanda is an unusual child who then develops through the story into an adult. And I just loved this book so much. And this one has also stuck with me. And not just because of the hurricane. The hurricane is a very small piece of the front of this, or the beginning of this book, but it was very, very well written, very suspenseful. And just the character development, as well as the setting and the place and the circumstances of the world in this novel, Really, really well done. Really intense, though. All right, one I have that I haven't read is Salvage the Bones by Jesmyn Ward, who is a Mississippian, an author that lives not far from me, actually. So I have had the privilege of meeting her many times, but I have never read this book. I really need to get to her list of books, to be quite honest. I obviously started this at some point because I had a place marked for it, but I haven't gotten to it. This one is about a hurricane in Mississippi in a fictional town on the coast called Bois Salvage. And there is a hurricane coming and they're stocking food. Their dad is not a healthy guy. He's an alcoholic. He drinks a lot. The children are being cared for by their sister, who is, in charge of supporting all of this as this hurricane comes in. And let me just say, there's a lot of preparation that has to occur for a hurricane. And they also have a dog who's just had puppies. So she's trying to keep the puppies alive. And this is a book that's told in 12 days. That is about this incredible family that is going through an incredible experience together, and these children who have no mother and really not a particularly responsive father. I have heard everyone I know that has read this has said that they absolutely loved it. It's short. I need to get to it. I'm going to try to prioritize it for this summer, although I have so many books that I want to read this summer. But I mean, it's not going to take me long. I could read this in a day, right? I mean, honestly, I could read this in a day. This is 259 pages long. So Jesmyn Ward is a National Book Award winner twice now. So there you go. Okay, and the next one I haven't read. It's by an author that I really want to read, but I haven't yet. And this is Chanel Cleaton. This is book 3 in the Perez Family series. So I need to know if any of you know if I need to read the Perez series, the Perez Family series #1 before I get to this. But this one really interests me because it's set in 1935 and it follows 3 women whose lives are changed by a hurricane in Florida, in the Florida Keys. And their circumstances that brought them here are pretty unique. So it says, tourists traveling on Henry Flagler's legendary overseas railroad Labor Day weekend is an opportunity to forget the economic depression that is gripping the nation. But one person's paradise can be another person's prison, and Key West native Helen Berner yearns to escape. The Cuban Revolution of 1933 left Mirta Perez's family in a precarious position. After an arranged wedding in Havana, Mirta arrives in the Keys on her honeymoon. While she can't deny the attraction to the stranger she's married, her new husband has some illicit business interests that may threaten their relationship and her life. And then Elizabeth Preston came from New York to Key West for a chance to save her once wealthy family from their troubles as a result of the Wall Street crash. Her quest takes her to the camps occupied by veterans of the Great War and pairs her with an unlikely ally on a treacherous hunt of his own. So these 3 women's paths connect as a result of this storm coming into the Keys, and they have all these other things occurring, as well as this potential for, for ruin and injury and all kinds of other things. So it really sounds like a book that I would like. And again, if any of you have read anything by Chanel Cleaton, I would love to know, because I have looked at more than one of hers and I have not yet bought any of them or acquired any of them in any way, but they do seem like books that I would enjoy. Then we get to some local stuff that is specifically about Katrina. So I have one book that's called Rising from Katrina, which is by Kathleen Koch. She used to work for, I think, CNN. She was a newscaster for someplace, but this one is absolutely about Katrina and what we went through here. She actually was from the area where I used to live, and she came here and did a book about the experience of Katrina here on the coast, and it is filled with stories, lots of photos, lots of information. Her family was from here, obviously, and so she came right away to make sure that they were all safe and stayed as long as she could to support. So yeah, I think that this will be good. I just haven't read it. I have a little bookmark in it from my old bookstore. That's how long I've had this. And she actually, I think, signed it too, because I think I went to a signing with her, which is how I acquired this. Oh, yes, she did. Yeah, she did. She signed it and she inscribed it for me and my partner. So glad you stayed to help our Gulf Coast recover. Always remember what matters. Because we did talk about uh, a lot of us really considered not living here ever again after this. No joke. It was really hard. But we did decide to stay and we did decide to rebuild and to help others rebuild. So we did what we could do. And then another good friend of mine, I know way better than I know Kathleen, is Alice Anderson, and she wrote Under Surge, Under Siege, The Odyssey of Bay St. Louis and Katrina. This is an illustration of her, which a friend of ours did too, which is incredible. It's a photo that was taken of her in front of her home with all the debris. I don't know if you can see that, but then they, of course, added color and some flair to it. Ellis was here for the entire time. She did not leave as we did. She stayed through it. And this is her story about what happened as she stayed here to her, as well as what happened to some of the other people that she knows. If there's ever been an account of the actual physical and emotional and mental toll of someone who stayed through a hurricane, this is definitely it. I read this one a little bit each year because it's intense, but she writes about a lot of our neighbors. She was our neighbor, and yeah, she's an incredible person. She now lives back in New Orleans. She's a online magazine producer, and so I did some contract work for her for a while when she had an online magazine here in the Gulf Coast. So she's a great human being and it's a great book. I just have not quite finished it yet. And then Douglas Brinkley, who I don't know, but I know his ex-wife, used to work with her actually, wrote a book called The Great Deluge, Hurricane Katrina, New Orleans, and the Mississippi Gulf Coast. This one is a chunker. You would definitely be committed to this one for sure. But again, this spans the actual storm and then the aftermath and how the government stepped in and whether or not that was a good response and some of the other things that happened after. It's really very detailed, and that's one of the reasons why I haven't gotten to it. Small print, very, very small print. But again, it's about people I know and it is about their experiences. But it is hard. It's a hard read. So I have to think about that as well because yeah, I mean, you got to take care of yourself when you are reading books about this kind of thing. Another one that I have not purchased, and I actually own almost every other book by this author except for this one, and that's Isaac Storm, A Man, a Time, and the Deadliest Hurricane in History, which is about a hurricane that happened in Galveston, Texas in 1900. So when you think about the technology that we have now to be able to prepare people well in advance of a storm that might be coming, there was not that same level of technology or ability to predict what might happen. This is about Isaac Klein, who was a meteorologist in the United States for the U.S. Weather Bureau. And he was not interpreting what was happening in a way that was useful to people to be able to let them know what was coming. And so the hurricane hit Texas and killed over 6,000 people and is still to this day one of the biggest natural disasters in U.S. history. This has some information that he sent, letters, telegrams. There's some, some data that actually occurred in the correspondence at that time. There were some stories from people who survived that still remain, and really just kind of how did this miscalculation occur? He explores that. So I have always wanted to take a look at that. And it's like I said, the only one that I haven't purchased, and I don't know why. I've looked at it more than once. So this might be the season after the No Buy Challenge that I add this to that stack of books by Erik Larson. My partner loves Erik Larson too. She's currently reading In the Garden of the Beasts, and she finished just before that the new one that we got, The Demon of Unrest. So she's gotten through many more of them than I have, but I think both of us probably have a like, ugh, about this one. And the last one that I'm going to share with you is actually set in New Orleans. It's called 5 Days at Memorial: Life and Death in a Storm-Ravaged Hospital. This one came out many years ago now too, and I have, I want to read it. I do, but I have kind of put it aside more than once. Sherry Fink wrote this book, and it is the story of how they were able to care for people who were in a New Orleans hospital and also people who were dying around them in the hospital as a result of the hurricane, and the challenges that occurred and the responses that they did not have. They had no power. They had flooding everywhere. They had staff that couldn't get out. And then there was this is the worst part. There was an allegation that some of the doctors injected some of the patients with life-ending drugs because they just couldn't keep up with what was happening and what was possible, I guess, for them to treat. It sounds horrible. It sounds heavy, which is why I said I've looked at it, I've thought about it. I haven't gotten to it. I hear it's really a good audio book. There is a series now on Apple TV that is based on this book, and I would like to read the book first before I watch the series, but yeah, this one is tough. They're all tough, you guys. Like, really, there's a lot of difficulty in these, but if this is something that interests you, and it does interest me, I mean, it really, really does. It's just heavy. This is a heavy, heavy topic. And so I don't want to be, sugarcoating this in any way. But I do think that some of these books are very important for us to read. Some of these stories are important for us to know and honor, especially the stories about people who survived and how they survived and what they did to support the recovery efforts. But yeah, this one it's a tough topic for sure. So thanks for watching today. Wherever you live, I hope that you're safe. I hope that you are well, and that you are not anticipating any kind of an incident like this. And again, my thoughts, prayers, support in ways that I can provide right now to the folks that are in Texas. I have several clients who are in that area, and one student, and they've been impacted in different ways depending on where they lived, but it's never easy. So I think about them every single day and send my prayers, and we send what we can here. We are a city that mobilizes when these things happen to other places because we understand how that works. So we are all busy gathering some things and support, resources, supplies, all those things. So if you want to help, there is always the American Red Cross. There's a number of other relief efforts that are located there. So, there's probably lots of GoFundMe's, all kinds of things, all kinds of ways that you can support folks that are in that area. So I encourage you to do that if that's something you have the means to do and that's something that touches your heart. And I thank you for watching. And as always, happy reading. Bye.